I think the best way to start our recap of the final day of the Championship season is to say that this sums up the second tier. George, as we headed into injury time on match day 46 of the Championship season, one goal could have changed who went down and who stayed up. Had Portsmouth scored against Hull, Luton would have been safe and Hull would have gone down. But they didn't. One goal heading into injury time could have changed the playoff picture. If Blackburn had scored at Sheffield United, they would have made the playoffs and Bristol City would have dropped out. That didn't happen, but it could have happened into the last few minutes of a 46-game season. When it came to the title, we knew Burnley and Leeds were up. But heading into injury time, with Burnley ahead and Leeds drawing at Argyle, one goal would have changed the direction of the Championship title for the 24-25 season if Leeds had scored, and they did. Manor Solomon winning the game for Leeds in Plymouth, winning the title for Leeds over Burnley, both sides racking up 100 points. And that was just one portion of what was an amazing Championship afternoon, George. But let's start there, where Burnley hosted Millwall, themselves gunning for a playoff spot. And you know what? If they'd won, they'd have got one. And they played just like it, flooding forward but leaving gaps. And that's why, despite going ahead through Ivanovic and leading at Turf Moor, Burnley came roaring back with 3 goals, 2 from Josh Brownhill, who ends as the league's joint second top goalscorer, and a brilliant goal from Jadon Anthony, who's proven himself to be a brilliant player this season. Burnley winning 3-1, heading into injury time, thinking they were champions, only for Leeds to score that winner at Argyle. Talk me through it.
Where do we start? With the Burnley-Millwall game, all credit to Millwall, who came out very fast. Ivanovic, who's been in such good form and has been a really smart pickup for them, and has been a key reason why they've been able to go into final day with an opportunity to get into the top 6 with a good poacher's goal, as we'd expect him to score. But very quickly that was undone. Brownhill scoring the goal to bring Burnley level. And then we watched this game, amongst others, and from half-time onwards, it already felt like Millwall had gone in at half-time and seen the score at Ashton Gate, and seen that Blackburn weren't winning, and seen that Borough weren't winning, and came out and they knew that basically if they won this game of football, probably going into it knowing they could win and still not finish in the top 6, they knew that if they won they probably would finish in the top 6. And I wonder if that ended up having kind of a detrimental effect, where rather than being the Millwall that we know, being compact, being hard to break down, they committed so many men forward, I think too early on in the game really, that it meant that it felt like an inevitability that Burnley were going to score. Like, they squandered plenty of opportunities before Anthony scored in the 66 minutes, whether it was Anthony himself or Edwards, who missed a good opportunity. You know, giving teams like
Turns
Burnley...
out when you give... I think we're about to say the same thing. Turns out when you give really good teams loads of space at home, they cut you to ribbons.
Yeah, and especially teams that aren't used to having it. And players like Anthony, players like Edwards, when they're given the opportunity to attack and transition, when they're given the opportunity to run onto the board in space, they're destructive. Like, it's breaking down low blocks. It's the difficult part. And, you know, Millwall had a couple of opportunities in the second half. Trafford made one decent save from a set piece, from a header. But, you know, it always looked in that second half like Burnley were going to get the job done. And, you know, I'm absolutely not going to criticise Alex Neil, because the job he's done since taking over Millwall has been incredible. You can understand why Millwall set out to play the way that they did. But I do kind of, and you know, the fans would have been livid had they done this, but I do wonder if their best opportunity to win this game probably would have been to be compact, to sit in, to try and stay in the game for as long as possible, then use that last 10-15 minutes in order to try and send men forward to win the game. With Leeds, it was, you know, we spoke on the betting show about Argyle and their very good record against the best teams in the league. They showed why again. You know, they found a way to score the opening goal. It was an own goal from Byram, but you know, it was as good a bit of individual work from Bundu in order to fashion the own goals you're going to see from most goals. Like, he deserves immense credit for that goal. And then they were resolute, and they dropped in and they defended Leeds. It reminded me a lot of the Liverpool game in the FA Cup, where they were so good at defending their box, and they were so good at defending any crosses that came in. Nonto got the equaliser, and then it was just a moment for Manor Solomon, who, you know, if you take Leeds' season as a whole, probably isn't in the top 3 or 4 players, I would say, in it. But in terms of that wobble that they had a couple of weeks ago, really, that put them in a position where suddenly not only the title but automatic promotion felt like it was in jeopardy. It's felt to me like he has been, watching Leeds in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been a constant thread where they shift the ball to him, and it's a case of like, what can you do? And it's fitting that therefore he was the man who scored the goal that wins them the title.
Completely agree. He has, in his last 6 league games, got 3 goals and 5 assists. Incredible numbers. I wonder to what extent we can say that Manuel Solomon and Carl Darlow might be the 2 crucial Leeds United players from the last, 5-6 weeks or so. But watching Solomon in the last couple of weeks is the closest that I've seen probably to when Jack Grealish was playing in the Championship for Aston Villa, where if your main pattern of play and attack is to move the ball out to Solomon, have a fullback going outside him, have a central midfielder running beyond him, and therefore pulling defenders out of the way to create space for him to come inside, and or many times a game going outside, going to the byline and delivering with his left foot. Well, that is a hell of a threat to have in the Championship, and I think we've seen that. 25 shots Leeds had, and eventually the last one went in. Argyle still had 1 or 2 chances after that as well, where you kind of felt like the title was done, Leeds fans partying, and then there's one like close-range header wide from one of Argyle's big meaty centre-backs. I mean, we could have had double drama here, but we didn't. Leeds win the Championship with 100 points. Them and Burnley have both achieved 100 points. It's absolutely incredible. And George, Burnley have got 100 points. They have been unbeaten in 33 games to finish the season. They've conceded 16 goals in 46 games. They lost only 2, and both of them were by 1-0. They didn't concede more than 1 goal in a single game, and they've not won the league. And that's because Leeds are champions, because while Burnley's defensive record was better than Leeds' attacking ability was much stronger than Burnley's over 46 games. That's why they've won the goal difference battle. They scored 26 goals more. It means the last 3 seasons that Leeds have played at this level, they won promotion under Bielsa with 93 points. They got 90 points last season. They weren't promoted. They've got 100 points this season and have won promotion. And George, it's actually time to hit the FOTMob corner button, because this is a title-winning season for Leeds, but also statistically one of the best that we've seen, one of the best that we've covered.
I really love that you just parlayed, for those YouTube viewers, the FOTMob corner button, then kind of the gesticulation arm straight afterwards, seamlessly. There are a lot of people who will watch football and watch this or listen to this, for whom the league table is enough of a measure of a team's quality over a season. And that's fine. I mean, I disagree with it. I think there's loads of nuance. There are underlying numbers that can tell us about a team's performance more than just a points tally. And a points tally will tell us about teams, in my mind, in the case of Leeds and Burnley, where one team can, between both boxes or even between both goals, basically be much better than the other one, but they can end up on the same points tally. And Leeds and Burnley, and that's no disrespect to Burnley, who deserve immense credit, and there are individuals within Burnley's side who make the difference. But in Leeds' I would say that Leeds, despite only finishing above Burnley on goal difference, thanks to a goal in the 92nd minute away from home, a relegated team, have won the title. In my mind, Leeds are as good a team as we've seen compared to the opposition since we've been doing the podcast, in terms of the level, in my mind, of Leeds' quality compared to the other teams in the Championship this season has been stark. And in another world and for other reasons, they could have won the league by many, many more. And I know that will ruffle some feathers, and I apologise not at all. First of all, we'll look at Leeds' goal output, where it's been a huge reason why they've won the league, as you say. They've scored 95 goals this season. That is 24 more goals than anyone else in the league. Norwich second on 71. Burnley third on 69, Coventry fourth on 64. Now, often when we see it in like an anomalous goal tally, the reason for that will be incredible finishing. But if we look at the expected goals number, Leeds are top on 91.1, so they've overperformed their expected goals by just under 4, which is, something. But they are still 21 or 25.5 goals higher than anyone else in the Championship. Coventry in second, 70.4. Borough 67.3, Norwich 64.1. Now, I mentioned Burnley earlier, 58.1. They ranked 10th, 69 goals scored. So they've outperformed their XG by 10 goals over the course of the season. Now we look at the XG conceded, which is a similar trend here. Obviously, Burnley are the side that we all know as being the best defensive team in the league. However, if we look at goals conceded over the course of the campaign, Leeds rank in 23rd position, or second best, effectively, having conceded 30 goals over the course of the campaign, with Burnley much better, way clear of them, with 14 better, 16 goals conceded. But if we look at the XG, the best team for XG, the team who've conceded the lowest number and therefore the worst quality chances over the course of the campaign, are Leeds, 30.7 expected goals conceded. So therefore bang on course for their own concession level. Burnley have conceded 38.4 expected goals. So therefore James Trafford in particular and some wasteful finishing, the reason why Burnley have kept,
30 clean sheets, 16 conceded
16
in total.
conceded. Yeah, I'm trying to work out the actual number. It's 18.4 under their it is 22.4 goals under their expected goals level. So a ridiculous number. And then the last one I'm going to bring up is the saves per game. And this is where I think the goalkeeping quality between Leeds and Burnley becomes very, very obvious, where Burnley have conceded 16 goals this season over the whole campaign. Their goalkeeper has made 92 saves. So Trafford has made 92 saves to their 16 goals conceded. Leeds have conceded 30 goals this season. Total saves between Darlow and Meslier, 74. The ratio there between goals conceded and saves made by the goalkeepers is so big. And, leads me to believe that should you swap Trafford and Darlow or Meslier, you're going to look at a points difference here, which is going to be stark. I think Leeds have been incredible to watch, amazing between both boxes, and have paid the price for having a keeper for the most part of the season that hasn't necessarily been up to scratch. It'll be fascinating to see what they do next season. And by contrast, Burnley, again, your goalkeeper is one of your 11 players, and arguably in Burnley's case, their most important player this season. And I think without him, the gap between them and Sheffield United that ended up being 10 points at the end of the season might have been much smaller.
Now, the playoff picture had two spots up for grabs, 5th and 6th. In the end, they were achieved and grabbed by the two incumbents. Coventry beat Middlesbrough 2-0, and Bristol City drew 2-2 with Preston. Doesn't tell the whole story of how it flip-flopped during the 90-odd minutes. But Cov did the business at the CBS. They beat Middlesbrough by 2-0. Both goals scored by Jack Rudoni, and Rudoni showing off the variety to his game. He is someone with 12 assists this season. That's been a strong part of his game, particularly when he's taken set pieces, yes, but also drifts wide from his number 10 role in build-up, crosses into the box, often from the right-hand side, for people in the middle to score. But he's also a box crasher. He's also an aerial threat, and he has been throughout his whole career. So he's got this really nice 3, maybe even 4D attacking personality, which I just love so much. And Lampard has done incredibly well to bring out the best in him. I can't actually find the interview, but I know it existed. When we picked Rudoni for 21 under 21 when he was at Wimbledon, and we were researching that, I found an interview with Rudoni at Wimbledon where he said his footballing hero was Frank Lampard, and what he based his game on was Frank Lampard. And I think it's really cool that Frank Lampard is his manager and Rudoni is playing the way that he does. He headed home the first goal from across from the right, and then he finished off the second goal, nice counter-attack with his left foot. Borough did have some chances in this game on the break. The way this game was always probably going to look was that both sides were going to have opportunities. I don't think Borough played very well. I don't think they were very impressive. Nothing about their performance surprised me. They underwhelmed once again. They didn't look particularly strong defensively. No shock there. And on the counter-attack, they consistently made poor choices, poor decisions. Their front line, ever since the start of February, really, because of Doak's injury, because of Latalat's sale, and those that they signed to replace them, not fitting, not clicking. They looked incoherent. They looked like individuals rather than a team. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind who the better team was in this game. and certainly who the more worthy playoff team are. Now, the playoff preview podcast is going to come within, 48 to 72 hours of this, so we're not going to go much deeper in terms of what it means for Coventry and how they'll shape up for the playoffs. We got a whole hour of that coming up in a couple of days. But they are in, as are Bristol City. They did swap places, so Bristol City finished 6th. They will play Sheffield United. Coventry will play Sunderland in an absolutely mouth-watering playoff semi-final. Bristol City were 2-0 down at home to struggling Preston, sliding Preston, spiralling Preston. Reece heading home a set piece, a corner from 6 yards out. Osmajic scoring on the break with Bristol City leaving gaps at the back. It couldn't have been going any worse for Bristol City at Ashton Gate. We also had Millwall taking the lead at Burnley. We'd had Blackburn taking the lead at Sheffield United. So it wasn't like they weren't under pressure permutations-wise as well. They managed to drag it back. 2 goals from Ross McCrory. One a header at the back post. One a nice finish, having made a run in behind. Brilliantly found by Jason Knight. And Bristol City did get what they wanted. Preston, their opponents, also got what they wanted, their point securing their safety. And for Bristol City, they head into the playoffs, their highest league finish for the first time since 2009. Fans flooding the pitch at Ashton Gate, chanting Liam Manning's name. There was a group of Bristol City fans in the pub we were in who were absolutely loving life. And it was really infectious, actually, to remind yourself, we're trying to cover 72 teams. We don't have the emotional connection. Well, you do with Oxford United, but for the others, it was really infectious, wasn't it, to feel the rollercoaster of emotions that those Bristol City fans went in Philomena's today, and to see at Ashton Gate as well the outpouring of excitement from that fan base.
There was a really funny moment during that where you were actually in the gents, where I basically Preston went 2-0 up through Osmajic, and the reaction from Bristol City fans was, as you can imagine, like just devastated because Blackburn were 1-0 up. So at that moment they were outside the top 6. And then Ahmed Hodgett scored. And being a people pleaser, I was like, yes, this is my opportunity to make Bristol City fans happy. So I shouted, lads, Blackburn are winning. Sorry, Sheffield United are winning. I got it wrong again. Sheffield United are winning. No, I said winning. And they were like, they're winning. And I was like, no, sorry, they're drawing. They've just scored, but you're in the top 6. And I could see he was like, yeah, that's good news, but you just told me they were winning, which would be way better, and that's kind of annoying. This was a really interesting kind of second half of this game, where, as we say, Preston, I think it probably became apparent to them that they just had to not lose this game, and even losing, they were probably going to be okay given the deficit that Luton were under. So having put themselves in such a strong position, the pressure was off, and Bristol City were able to capitalise on that. And the pressure, it felt like the minutes between like Osmajic scoring and the 70th minute at Ashton Gate felt like the last 20 minutes of the game, where there was a target in mind for Bristol City, and that target was, we've got to draw level, and when we draw level we're coming 6th, and they achieved that. And then the last 15 minutes or so, as someone might have mentioned might happen in the betting show, was just a case where Preston took the ball to the corner at one end. Bristol City suddenly stopped committing so many men forward. Both teams were very aware that a point was completely fine for each. A bit more jeopardy for Bristol City, of course, because had Blackburn scored a last-minute winner, then they would have been in trouble. But yeah, both sets of fans leaving that game incredibly happy because of the results elsewhere. And credit to Bristol City, who looked pretty poor on the day, and I do think that Preston's lack of jeopardy definitely played into their hands. Ross McCrory, a very unlikely brace hero in their quest for the top 6, but it's an incredibly significant result for them. This is the first time they've qualified for the playoffs since losing the playoff final in 2008 to Dean Wendas's probably the best goal ever scored in a championship playoff final. This is a Liam Manning who took over last season in, and let's not dress this up, an incredibly unpopular appointment. Bristol City fans are not happy with Nigel Pearson being sacked. Bristol City fans are not happy with an appointment from a manager who they perceived as being someone who was a cheap option, who had been sacked from the bottom end of League One by MK Dons, who had a very small sample size at Oxford to show what he was about. And for much of this season early on was seen as being someone who wasn't right. And Liam Manning has gone through hell this season after losing his little boy, and I'm sure that he would like this not to be brought up too often when talking about his achievements, but I think in the grand scheme of this season it's impossible not to, because for him to have achieved this at Bristol City in trying circumstances for so many reasons, I think deserves immense credit, no matter what happens between here and the end of the playoffs, no matter what the perception is of their performance today and in the game prior. They've finished sixth. They've given themselves a huge opportunity of getting to the Premier League next season. And, you know, the unthinkable has happened between this time last year and now to do so. So massive, massive credit to him on an incredible job.
Hear, hear. They'll play Sheffield United, who hosted Blackburn, who were gunning for the playoffs, going all out to try and win and hope that results went in their favour. They did go in their favour. They didn't get the win that they needed. They were 1-0 up. But Sheffield United equalising through Ahmed Hodzic. Rovers not able to get the winner. It's amazing late season flurry. I mean, how do you look at this? Is it an impressive late season flurry? It's clearly an impressive campaign, over 46 games for Blackburn Rovers. It's clearly an impressive points tally and league finish. It's much better than we expected them to do pre-season. You've got to look at that run of defeats that they had when Ishmael first came in, and clearly it wouldn't have taken more than one result to go in a different way for them to make the top six. But you could say that, I suppose, about any of the teams that have just missed out. They didn't make it. Bristol City will play Sheffield United. Sunderland will be the team playing against Coventry. They lost 1-0 at QPR. I've got a lot to talk about on the playoff preview when it comes to the way that Sunderland are heading into the playoffs. But I was willing to suggest that putting their best foot forward on final day against QPR in front of their home fans, winning comfortably against a team whose manager, Martí Cifuentes, is on gardening leave, of all things, might have been a good way to tell their fans, no, we've got this in hand. Don't you worry. We've just been chilling. We've just been resting. We've just been preparing. We're heading to the playoffs in good shape. They lost 1-0. Not Kevin Madsen. Nicholas Madsen with the goal for QPR. The playoff preview, as mentioned, in the next couple of days. Now, at the bottom of the Championship, we knew it was going to be 1 from 5. We knew there was likely to be some movement throughout the 90 minutes in the as it stands table. Much of it came pretty early on, as it turns out, because Luton, who started the day above the bottom 3, lost 5-3 to West Brom. They went behind early. Tom Fellows scoring at the near post. They equalised almost immediately through Elek and Ali. And then Daryl Dike making his first start in, 2 years, headed West Brom in front. Fellows scored again to make it 3-1. Styles scored twice in a matter of minutes to make it 5-1 to West Brom. A calamitous collapse for Luton Town, who did make it 5-2 and then 5-3 through Clark and Ali, but lost the game, meaning it was out of their hands. And whatever happened at Fratton Park was going to dictate whether they stayed up or went down. Hull City went ahead at Portsmouth through Matt Crooks from a set piece, did concede through Christian Sadie, but the second half passed without a huge amount of drama, without a huge amount of jeopardy in the end. They saw it out quite well. There was a lot of stoppages. They managed the game relatively well in the end, and Portsmouth didn't have huge motivation to go great guns to beat them. I wouldn't say Hull played brilliantly, but in the end, George, they did what was needed. Hull are staying up. Preston stood up to the pressure of their own spiral with that 2-2 draw at Ashton Gate. They're staying up. Derby and Stoke, well, that was predictable. They drew 0-0. They both stayed up. And instead, it's Luton Town who've been relegated for a second straight season. It's the most crazy roller coaster, surely, of any club in the pyramid over the last 6-7 years, even if you stretch it out to coming on 20 years. They're relegated from the Championship to League One in 2007, from League One to League Two in 2008, from League Two to the National League in 2009. 5 years, promoted back to League Two in 2014. Promoted to League One just 7 years ago, last month. Promoted to the Championship straight away, 2019. Promoted to the Premier League, 2023. Relegated to the Championship, 2024. Relegated to League One, 2025. What are your reactions to Luton Town's relegation?
Oh, I mean, it's been a crazy season. And, you know, for them to put themselves in the position they're in today, going away from home to West Brom's side, who were so down on their luck and so down on their chances, it feels like almost a driving factor behind Luton's relegation is, I'm sure their fans will feel like they didn't turn up today. but basically coming up against a West Brom side who were bang at it. Like, West Brom dominated this game from start to finish in a way that I don't think many people saw coming. You know, Luton's goals themselves came from individual moments of like real quality. 2 from Elek and Ali, who's been so impressive since he came in January, and Jordan Clark, who's often a source of quality for them. But apart from those goals, they created very little. West Brom, you know, maybe buoyed by the fact that, you know, Daryl DK coming back into the side for his first start in 2 years, a player of real quality. Maybe just with the pressure off for what is a, you know, relatively young side, and, you know, Fellows, who started the season so well, Styles, who's a player that we've spoken about a lot at League One level, but hasn't necessarily done it in the Championship consistently. These guys were the protagonists in a game where, you know, maybe the pressure was off. It shouldn't be that surprising. And it was interesting to note as well that because, you know, normally game state dictates that when a team in a game of this magnitude are ahead, you know, they drop off. But every time I looked at this game, and we had it on our screen, when West Brom were, you know, 5-1 up or whatever else, or sorry, 5-2 up, I should say, it was still them dominating the ball. It was still them camped in Luton's half, and them trying to, you know, create the better opportunities and conceded very little on the receiving end. I think there's been a massive case of complacency with Luton this season, both complacency that we can criticise. You know, there's that interview that Alfie Doughty gave back in, I think, February, where he said there was no chance Luton would get relegated, but also an understandable complacency where, when you're a team that has like gone up to the dizzy heights of where Luton got to, you know, and I've mentioned this on the pod before, speaking to Luton fans, you know, I think they struggle to get out of their funk. I think they struggle to get up for games against teams that they perceive to be relatively boring, and that played out in their performances. And I also think there was a complacency in the decisions that were made in January. You know, the appointment of Matt Bloomfield, and I have no doubt that he will probably be a very good appointment for them long term in terms of what they're doing in League One next season. The signings of Ali and Asgard, who in the last 2 or 3 weeks have been their best players by miles, but it's taken time for all of that to click. And at the moment where those people were brought into the club, they probably needed something like a quick fix immediately in order to stave off relegation, rather than bringing in people who would be good for them long term. And normally I hate that kind of short term thinking, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility to kind of do both, and to make decisions that in the short term can fix things whilst also having the eye on the future. So, you know,
they picked up 3 points in Bloomfield's first 8 games, and you can basically look at the season as they paid for loyalty and patience with Rob Edwards. They paid for thinking. Again, and I'm not sure I can criticise this that strongly in a weird way. They paid for thinking, this is a man that we respect. This is a man that we know has been and can be a good football manager.
Do you think that's
and
it,
despite what we're seeing on the pitch, we're going to back him to turn it around. Mate, it was bad from the start. It was really bad from the start. And he stayed
I agree.
until January. Like, that was too long. And then, as you've alluded to, 3 points from Bloomfield's first 8 games. But like, a lot of damage had been done. The start of Bloomfield's reign added a lot more damage. They had a really good 10 or 11 games from like the 35th game to the 45th game. They got themselves to a point. It's a story for me of 35 bad games, 10 good ones, and then one disaster on final day that no one really saw coming.
Yeah, I mean, I just, it kind of feels like the whole club only woke up to the very real threat of relegation maybe after that Watford game where they were just like horrendous. And I just wonder, you know, if the management or the appointment of whoever was manager was actually, you know, always you're going to be the person who fronts up to the media, and you're the figurehead and you're the everything else. But I increasingly believe that Rob Edwards had like very little to do with the malaise. Like, I don't think he was helping anything towards the end, certainly, and it felt like from a personal level things had spiraled, but it kind of felt like he was almost, in my mind, the one taking the punches, but not necessarily the person to blame for being on the receiving end of them, if that makes sense. And
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. The way that the team played for 25, 26 games. Like, I'm not saying that he's solely to blame, because
but they got worse.
They They continued to be pretty bad for a bit, and then but they got very clearly got a lot better and very visibly improved in a number of the things that he was unable to improve the team on, to the point where...
That's my point, is I think they'd have improved because... I think they'd have improved with him there. I mean, it would have been horrendous for him to stay, and it would never have happened.
No way. We spent all season saying they'll improve under Edwards. They got... How many more games do you want to give him to improve?
Well, until everybody involved in the club, realised the position they were in. I don't think there was anything that Bloomfield...
So you think the strongest reason for their improved form was because they realised they were in trouble, not because Bloomfield did a few things like consistently select the same players, drop the defensive line back so they weren't so exposed, embrace the style of play rather than chopping and changing every 3 games? You think it's just they went, we're in a scrap here?
I think a driving factor of it was a realisation of the position they were in, yeah, for sure. And obviously you can credit Bloomfield with certain tactical tweaks, but if you look at the improvement of individuals, and also, as I say, I think Asgard in particular has been a massive driving force in their improvement. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's so easy for us to sit and look at managers and say that they're the reason. But I just don't think, I don't think he was a driver of good. I don't think he was necessarily having a positive impact on their performances. But I think that had they made a decision earlier, I'm not convinced, especially given what happened in the 10 games after he left. I don't think it was a case of necessarily he's the reason we're poor, let's get rid of him and then things will improve.
And we should recognise as well that a relegation, or frankly anything that a team achieves or suffers in a 24-team league, it's not just about what you do. It's not just about how you play.
Yeah.
It's about the teams around you as well. And Luton Town, unfortunately, and you can say the same about Plymouth Argyle and Miron Muslic. You can't say the same about Cardiff City because they really botched this whole season. But they appointed managers, and they will feel like the appointments they made weren't disastrous. Even though your point is strong about what Bloomfield's early results, I reckon Luton are pretty happy with Matt Bloomfield as their manager. I reckon they're doing what they thought he was going to do. The problem that all these teams had is that Hull hired Ruben Sayes, and he picked up more points in the last 20 games than Luton picked up since Matt Bloomfield's appointment. The problem is that Argyle improved, obviously didn't end up above Luton, but it was kind of the rising water level, if you like, of the relegation battle just rose in the second half of the season. Derby hired John Eustace, and that went absolutely brilliantly. Stoke hired Mark Robbins, and that was enough to keep them up. Not an incredible points return, but enough in the end. So actually there's a weird way in which most of the teams that we're talking about change their managers, and most of them will feel like they made all right appointments, but because they all improved in a certain way. And this is why we have this final points tally of going down on 49 points is abnormal. It's a lot of points to get and still get relegated. The fact is that this group of teams at the bottom 6, if you like, 44 points to 50 points, it's quite a high level of points for a championship relegation battle. That is part of this. You can't just zoom in on what did Luton do wrong, what did Plymouth do wrong, what did Cardiff do wrong. That's the wider context. It's been a fascinating relegation battle because of that. Teams have looked all right. Almost all of them have looked all right at different points, and yet 3 have to go down.
And there's a wider point to that, which is that, as you say, Luton are on 49 points. Had Hull gone the same way as Cardiff and had been relegated on 46 points, there'd be the narrative would be, look at Matt Bloomfield, who saved Luton and the incredible job that he's done. And obviously, yes, there's a target element to management and football where, as each game goes on, where you've got to get to, but managers shouldn't be judged on the as I spoke about with Gary Rowett in the How Do You Manage that went out this morning. You shouldn't be judged on how others are doing. The fact that a points tally can remain the same, but the perception of a job done can change is, in my mind at least, a bit unfair on the manager.
Yeah. Elsewhere in the Championship, Norwich beat Cardiff by 4-2. Norwich went 1-0 up. Then Cardiff had a man sent off. Chambers. Nunez scored a brilliant free kick, his second of the game for 2-0. Sainz scored, which meant he ends up joint second with Brownhill behind Perot for the Golden Boot. Salek scored 2 for Cardiff as they came back with 10 men and lost by 4-2. Jack Wilshere takes 2 interim management games after the sacking of Torrup, a draw at Borough, a win at Cardiff. I think if they'd won 4 or 5-0 rather than the Cardiff comeback in the second half, there might be some Norwich fans thinking, you know what, that was a bit of fun. I wouldn't mind seeing a bit more Jack Wilshere. As it is, I'm really interested to see how they approach this in the summer. I wonder if that was the last game for Josh Sargent. I wonder if that was the last game for Marcelino Nunez. These guys have both done 3 years in the Championship now. And albeit, Nunez hasn't hit the consistent heights that someone of his talent probably suggests he could. Sargent, I personally think is absolutely due a move away from the Championship. I think he's too good to be playing for a team that's finished in mid-table for the second season out of 3. Swansea drew 3-3 with Oxford United. What a bit of fun that was for all involved. Fajeta with an injury time equaliser for Oxford. What an away day for those Oxford fans who were able to watch the relegation battle unfold with no stress, no drama at all. It also means, George, and this is serious and positive, there's a lot of chat at the moment about the issues between the Premier League and the Championship, with 3 teams going up and coming back down for the second season in a row. If you zoom out to the pyramid as a whole, a healthy pyramid has teams going up and staying up, and teams going down not necessarily bouncing straight back up. And in the Championship this season, Derby, Portsmouth and Oxford United came up from League One. We knew it was going to be really tough for them, and it has been really tough for all 3 of them, but all 3 of them have stayed up, and I think that's something to celebrate.
Yeah, different points all season. All 3 have looked likely at some point to go down, and all 3 have stayed up. Pompey have retained the faith with John Mousinho, and I think there's probably, I think being able to keep hold of a rookie manager who's won you the league title for a campaign and ride out some difficult periods, and give that manager a new contract when things haven't looked particularly good, and end up staying up as comfortably as they have done, is just an incredible achievement from Pompey. Similarly, for Derby and Oxford to both make the very difficult decisions to part company with the 2 managers who took them up, which I would normally, not like to applaud, but in terms of appointing John Eustace and Gary Rowett, I think have shown an understanding as to the type of football and the type of character, and frankly, 2 pretty ambitious appointments. Obviously as an Oxford fan, I'm surprised that we were able to attract Rowett, given the job that he had done at certainly a Millwall previously, and similarly Derby able to attract Eustace, who was managing a club who had a very decent chance of finishing in the top 6. So I think all 3 clubs in different ways have shown how to cope with promotion out of League One, because the gap is obviously very, very big, and I can't imagine there'll be many seasons where the 3 promoted teams end up staying up, albeit certainly maybe next season coming with Wrexham and Birmingham, it feels like it's going to be a pretty difficult league, the Championship next season, because normally you look at the teams coming up in hope that there'll be a couple there you can expect to fall back down, but maybe it'll be a surprise if either of those 2 are involved.
Sheffield Wednesday went to Watford and drew 1-1 to secure a top half finish, 12th spot for Danny Röhl's men. Watford finishing 1 point back in 14th. The final Championship league table has Leeds top, joint on points with Burnley, but with a better goal difference, winning the title. Sheffield United, Sunderland, Coventry and Bristol City round out the top 6. Blackburn finished 7th and Millwall finished 8th. 2 excellent league positions for those 2 sides. West Brom and Borough being 9th and 10th probably reflects an underachievement for those 2 sides. Swansea, Sheffield Wednesday, Norwich and Watford are 11th to 14th. QPR, who've placed Martí Cifuentes on gardening leave. Bit of a power struggle it seems with him and their very young CEO, Mr. Nouri, and Cifuentes, as is often the case, has not won that battle, it seems, and has been placed on gardening leave. Watch that space. Portsmouth 16th and Oxford 17th, with Stoke 18th and Derby 19th. Preston 20th on 50, Hull 21st on 49, and dropping on goal difference, Luton with Argyle on 46 points in 23rd, and Cardiff finishing bottom on 44.